What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. And break down what's happening with earnings that just came out, some big data that came out for today, what you should be watching for tomorrow in the charts as we have new developments taking place. I'm also going to be talking about a very big test for SPY and the markets as the VIX is in a very critical place, and SPY is approaching some very tough resistance. But before I break the all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I am personally not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, deposit $100, you're guaranteed 7 free stocks, and the offer ends in just about 13 days. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with the markets. So CPI data came out for today, and everything was aligned with expectations if you look at the data. And as a result, SPY and the market ended up breaking all-time highs. As a reminder, just to be real blunt and quick, core CPI month-over-month was 0.3%, aligning with expectations. Year-over-year core was at 3.6%. That is aligning with expectations. CPI for all items month-over-month was 0.3%, aligning with expectations. Same thing with year-over-year, 3.4%, aligning with expectations. You guys can see the numbers right here. Everything was aligning with expectations for CPI. That's why the market continued to rip. And the same thing happened with retail sales. We got 0%. So that was actually decent, showing more contraction. That inflation is more likely to be under control. Now, let me just say that I do not fully trust these numbers. I'm not saying that they're objectively the truth. I'm simply stating that this is what the numbers were showing us. This is what the market was moving based off of. And we have to accept these numbers because that's why the market started to rally. This could be part of why Jerome Powell was being very optimistic yesterday. He knew the numbers would be decent. That could be one of the big reasons why. Now, we had more Fed speakers. They didn't really say anything too crazy. The market was just more focused on CPI. That's why it began to rally. This is what the CPI chart looks like, by the way. So for the month of April, the data came out. You guys can see a little decrease in CPI for all items. Then for all items without food and energy, we also saw this nice little decrease. Now, as we're getting very close to some critical time periods, the market is once again still holding up very well, but we're going to be watching resistance just to see how we end up reacting. There's more details on the numbers right over here, such as seeing how food has changed. They're saying that food prices were essentially the same overall, and we actually saw gas prices actually go up just a little bit, but nothing too insane, at least based off this data. Now, excuse me, I don't fully believe that. One thing worth noting about CPI is it's not really indicative of what's currently happening. It's more like that's what happened in the past. And then on top of that, it doesn't really account for what's happening about prices in a way. Because when you think about it, people say that CPI is dropping, this and that, it's good. Well, it's not necessarily good. It just means that the rate at which prices are going up is decreasing. So prices are still continuing to go up, and it's still very hard for everyday Americans, despite the quote unquote good numbers that the Fed is talking about. So it's not really as close to reality as some people may make it seem. So moving forward, when it comes to the way that things are moving, we had Cisco announce its earnings. And then for tomorrow, we have Walmart, JD.com, and John Deere announcing earnings in the morning. For Cisco, we actually saw them report better than expected results as revenue suffers the steepest drop in 15 years. So despite that, you guys can see it right here. EPS was to be at 88 cents. Revenue is at $12.7 billion above expectations, despite the fact that revenue declined. And then on top of that, you guys can see that right over here, their fiscal 2024 revenue guidance was aligned with expectations as they've beaten some more metrics. So EPS is also close to expectations, actually kind of like in between. So pretty decent EPS, but very strong looking revenue, at least for the longer term, despite the fact that we saw revenue decrease, at least during this specific quarter, excuse me. For the Fear and Greed Index, right now things are very greedy. We're on the greed side right now. We're between neutral and extreme greed. We're getting closer to becoming more and more greedy as more and more buyers are continuing to step in. Market momentum is currently extremely greedy as more buyers are stepping in again. We're starting to see big shifts here and there. The puts and call option positioning is dropping again as we're seeing more and more of these puts being closed, more calls being bought, and calls are making up the majority positions. Once again, we're starting to see more buyers taking control. The VIX is at critical support right now. We're going to be watching to see if we bounce off it or not. If the VIX continues to fall, it's going to be a big anomaly. Excuse me, guys. I apologize. And that's actually very important because if the VIX keeps on falling, if the VIX keeps on tanking, it's going to be losing some critical support. And it's going to be the first time that's happened this entire year. So if the VIX ends up hitting a new low, that's going to be a sign that the market is just continuing to become more aggressive and something very unusual is going on, in my personal opinion. So with that happening, we'll be watching the VIX and all these different things. For data for tomorrow, it's going to be Thursday, May 16th, 2024. 1 hour before the market opens at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have initial jobless claims coming out. We have continuing jobless claims, not to mention exports and import prices. Initial jobless claims is going to be very important. We'll see how this affects the markets. We'll see if this helps the market rally more or not. So we're going to be watching some key resistance. And then finally, after all the data comes out, before the market opens, we have more manufacturing and industrial production numbers coming out 15 minutes before the market opens. And then once the market opens, all day it's just going to be a bunch of Fed speakers. We have Barr, Harker, Mester, not to mention Bostic, all giving speeches throughout the day. And that's pretty much it for now. So seeing that inflation actually came in aligned with expectations, more Fed speakers are more likely to be less hawkish based off that, and the market's continuing to really like what we're seeing. But what is the issue with the markets? What is the big thing I'm going to be talking about that's part of this big test? So this is not a clickbait video. There is a big test coming. I want to talk about that. So SPY is pushing very nicely, very strong, nice volume. It's gaining a lot of momentum. But the issue is the first thing is we've gained a lot of steam in such a very slow period of time. And then we're approaching resistance at 530. Now, as SPY is approaching 530, the VIX is in a critical place right now. One thing I pointed out in my previous videos is that the VIX, every single time we hit 12.4, it's bounced every single time this year off this area, which is exactly where it's at right now. So is the VIX about to get a big bounce right here? Is the market about to see a little pullback, or or is the VIX going to end up losing 12.4? If the VIX loses 12.4, that's going to be indicative of the fact that we're in a very, very different market now, that there's something very different happening from history, because historically, if we hit this level, the VIX should bounce, the market should get a little rejection. But then nothing is guaranteed until we see how SPY reacts to 430. So we're at a critical level. We'll have to see if it breaks or not. We'll have to see if the VIX bounces or not. That's going to be very, very pivotal for the way the market moves and the direction we get for the remainder of the week, also going into next week. All right, so that's the very, very big test. We will see if the VIX finally gets a bounce. If it does, if it keeps falling, we end up losing the support. That's going to be the first time it did this since 2023. So something very big is happening to the VIX. We will have to wait and see. For SPY, from a technical standpoint, okay, if you look at the 4-hour, we look bullish. If you look at the daily charts, we're also looking quite bullish right now, in my personal opinion. There's no sign that this is rejecting. So this is kind of favoring that it might try to go a little bit higher, and the VIX might actually get a rejection. That's a strong possibility. Is it a guarantee? I can't say that, but right now the market is looking like it's building a lot of momentum. So in my opinion, I think that SPY is going to be testing 530 tomorrow. If we break it, we could be going all the way up to 532. If we reject here, we're going to be dipping all the way down to 528 and 526.6. Overall, the chart is looking more bullish on SPY and favoring the upside, as there is no sign of it kind of pulling back today. But just know that we're at critical resistance. The VIX is at critical support, and we'll have to see how we end up reacting to this test. But technicals still remain bullish as is. Now for Tesla, Tesla was trying to rebound a bit. We actually pushed all the way up to 182, trying to fill an imbalance. I was hoping it would go a little bit higher, but we got some bad news, got some layoff news, more talk about how they have rivals now, at least with AI in China, not to mention, other competitors announcing the launches of more affordable EVs, such as NIO. And then there was also a lot of negative news that came out involving other things. Excuse me. So all of that coming together caused Tesla to get a bit of a rejection, and we are looking a little bit weaker, at least for now. So with us kind of turning on the 4-hour and getting this rejection, we could dip a little bit more. But the question is, will we still establish this option? Are we going to continue to make higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows? It's going to depend on this test of 172. I think that Tesla could dip all the way down to 173.5, if not 172, this range down here in the lower 170s. Then we're going to be watching to see if we get a big bounce or not on Tesla. If we get the bounce, Tesla could continue to uptrend. If we lose 172, we're going to be dipping even lower, all the way down to our gap fill at 168. So I think tomorrow Tesla might dip a little bit more, but we'll watch and see if we get a bounce at 172 or so. If we do, it could continue to uptrend. If we fail to do so, we're going to be dipping even more. Watch 175 as resistance as well, 176.21, 178, and then 180. All the way up there. Watch 172 is support. If we lose that, watch 170 and this white trend line right here. If that fills, we have a gap to fill all the way down to 168. I think Tesla will dip a little bit more. Then we'll have to see if we get a bounce or not. That's going to be critical for the share price. Nonetheless, guys, Nvidia is looking bullish. Nvidia is trying to push up very, very nicely right over here, breaking past 950. If we zoom out of the chart like this on the 4-hour time frame, you're going to notice that we have a nice inverse head and shoulders like structure, and Nvidia still looks bullish. Nvidia looks to me like it's going to try to go all the way up towards about 960, which is where we had this previous resistance, which is where we got stopped from over the last few months. So it looks like there's a little bit more upside coming. The chart remains bullish as is. For the QQQ, this thing is still pushing in the after hours. It's still holding up very nicely. Watch 453 as resistance. If we break this, look for 455. If it rejects in this 453 area, we're going to be dipping back down towards 450. We'll be watching this very, very carefully just to see how it goes. But the chart remains bullish right now. It looks more like it wants to push higher. So make sure you watch the levels I called out. Just know that we are breaking all-time highs on the NASDAQ and the QQQ. So it could go even higher in my personal opinion, but just watch it just to be safe. Also, for the people interested in Bitcoin, we're also breaking past the critical resistance right over here. And we have an imbalance all the way up here to fill. So it does look like it's going to go even higher and get closer to 67,000. Bitcoin looks a little bit more bullish as well for now. But once we get a little higher to that resistance, we'll see if we reject or not. For Aapl is bullish. We're actually approaching the 190 area. We'll be watching to see how we end up reacting right over here as we're approaching this 190.5 resistance. If we lose 189, we're going to be dipping all the way down to 188. And we have some tough resistance to fight for. Today we hit 190, kind of rejected a bit. We kind of struggled up there. So yes, I think that for now, Aapl is looking more bullish. It's going to try to retest 190 tomorrow. We'll have to see if it rejects or not, as that's going to be very critical for the share price. So I'll be watching that very carefully going into tomorrow, and we'll see what happens from there. For Neo, they announced their Envo launch. We actually saw a little rejection right over here. I think it might dip a little bit more, get closer to 5.1, and then we'll see if we get a bounce or not. So we have a double top like structure. Look for a little bit more downside and see if we get a bounce. So that being said, guys, that is it for the main five I typically talk about. Now I just want to transition to talking more about other tickers. I'm going to be a lot more blunt with them. So what do I see for Palantir? We actually saw a slightly green day today. We're looking a little bit more bullish on our 4-hour time frame. I think that is possibly retest the 50 EMA at 21.7. If that breaks, look for 22. If we lose 21.5, we're going to be dipping all the way down to about this imbalance fill at 20.8. So it might continue to shuffle for some time, maybe push a little bit higher towards 22. So look for a little push and some sideways price action, and we'll see if we get a rejection or not. So watch for that very, very carefully. For Supermicro is looking once again more bullish as of right now. We did call out a potential push that was coming. We've approached this resistance all the way up here after getting a crazy bullish day, and we're actually looking at some very, very nice looking results. So after their very, very important results that came out, so we're looking at a very, very big push right here. If it breaks this resistance right here around this 944 to 945 area, going to be looking for this thing to go all the way up towards 975. If we lose this support at 945, we could be dipping back down to about 900. But overall, the chart is looking more bullish. I think it might dip a little bit more and then try to make its way back up towards 975. And then we'll see what happens after that. The chart looks like it has more upside potential. For Rivian, we came down a bit with the entire EV sector. We're at support right now. If we lose 10.15, look for a dip all the way down to 10, then eventually 9.8. If we break past 10.5, look for 10.73, then eventually the 11.1 area. I think that we're on a very, very nice uptrend right now. We can actually bounce off the 50 EMA and start pushing. So there is more upside potential in Rivian, in my personal opinion. For SoFi is on a bit of an uptrend right over here, holding up decently. Watch support. It's actually looking a little bit weaker than the markets despite being in an uptrend. We have to bounce off 7.18. If we bounce off that, we're going up to 7.4. If we lose 7.18, we're going to be dipping even lower. I favor that's going to actually try to rebound and hit 7.4. So look and see if we get a bounce or not. On top of this, I just want to say that the IWM Russell 2000 is on a very, very nice rip right now. It's up 1.25%. We did call out more potential upside if we break resistance. So we have resistance right over here at 210 and also at this 212 area. To me, the chart looks a little bit more bullish. It could go closer to 212. We'll see if we get a rejection or not. If we do reject off 210, we're going to be dipping back down to about 207, where our 20 EMA happens to be. That's also where this previous resistance becoming support is going to be. But I favor a bit more upside as a stronger possibility. For AMD, in my personal opinion, is going to likely push towards our 200 EMA. So I think we might be testing 163. So I see a little bit more upside potential, and this could actually lead to more of a push. So watch for that very carefully. Did I say AMD? I meant AR. I'm sorry, that was AMD. Sorry about that, guys. Now we have ARM. ARM is currently approaching this 112 area. I think that we could be retesting 111. This previous resistance becoming support right here at 110. We might come down a little bit more and we'll see if we get a bounce. If we bounce off 110, we're going to be looking for a push all the way up towards this imbalance fill at 122. If we lose 110, we're going to be dipping all the way down towards the 105 area. So I think it's going to dip a little bit, but we'll see if we get a bounce or not. So look for a dip and see if we get a bounce. For Coinbase, we're looking more bullish right now. I think that's trying to fill this imbalance. We actually reached about 222. Look for a retest of 218. If we lose that, look for 213.5. If we bounce off this, we could be pushing all the way up towards 226. So I favor a little bit more upside as a stronger possibility. So we'll see what happens after that. For Amazon, we're just trading sideways right now. We have 187 as resistance. We have 185 as support. Trading sideways in this range. We're actually on a bit of a downtrend right here. So it might come down a little bit more. I could see a 184 retest, but right now it's just shuffling. It's been like this for 2 straight days. So we'll see which way we break. Do we lose the 184s to start sinking, or do we break past 187 and bounce? The chart is on a slight decline, so it does favor downside a bit more, but we'll just have to wait and see for confirmation. For Meta's looking a bit more bullish. We broke past our resistance at basically this 475 area. We just hit 478. Now we're actually approaching higher levels. So I do see a bit more potential for us to get closer to about the 482 area, then eventually 485. So I might go a little bit higher, but then once we get close to that resistance, we're going to likely see some more, some more shuffling and more sideways price action. So look for a bit more upside than some shuffling. Microsoft finally got a breakout above this area, and we're approaching resistance right here at 424. Break that, so we're going all the way up to about 427. If we reject off 424, we're going to be dipping back down towards 420. But the chart is looking a bit more bullish, so look for 424 to be tested and see if we break it or not, or if we reject. For Google, we're looking a little bit more bullish. It does have potential to go higher towards 175. So I'm going to be looking for a little bit more of a push. Watch 171 as support and 169.2 as well, but the odds favor a little bit more upside. How's GameStop looking? In my personal opinion, we're looking a little bit weak on GameStop. 20 EMA happens to be at 34. If we lose that, we're going to be dipping down towards 25. So it's looking a little bit weaker. AMC is also looking a little bit weaker. We're going to be looking at support at this 5.12 area. If we lose this, we're going to be dipping all the way down to about the 5 flat area, and eventually 4.3 is coming. So AMC is looking a bit more bearish. It does favor downside, so we'll see how things go with that. The VIX is at critical support at this 12.4 area. If we lose this support, it's going to be the first time this happened this entire year. It's going to be a big anomaly. So we'll see if that ends up being the case. Do we see this big bounce from here, which may cause the market to reject as SPY is at resistance at 530, or are we about to see this thing lose support, which is going to be followed by the market potentially pushing higher? So we'll be watching to see, are we about to see something that's very unique for this entire year, or is something else about to happen? We'll just wait and see. The 10-year treasury yield is also dipping right now. We're approaching support at 4.35. The last time we hit this 4.3 area, we did see a big bounce on it. We have a gap to fill above here too. Or are we about to see this continue to fall? We're approaching support. Previous resistance becoming support at 4.3. So we'll wait and see what happens with the 10-year treasury yield. And then for the dollar index, we're looking a little bit more bearish. It looks to me like it might tip a little bit more towards 104 flat. So this is actually a bullish signal for the markets. This suggests that more upside is possible. So with that being said, the market's at a very, very critical place. We're going to be seeing a big test tomorrow. I think SPY could push a little bit higher. There is more upside potential, but we'll have to wait and see what happens as we hit this resistance. We'll have to see if SPY rejects or not. So wait and see how things go. I want to thank you all so much for listening. I really appreciate every single one of you for your views and also for everything else that you say and do for this channel. So thank you. Please have an absolutely incredible rest of the day. The market is technically speaking, it's more bullish right now, so we haven't officially rejected whatsoever on SPY and other indices. So we look more bullish, but we're at some critical resistance and the VIX is at some critical support. So we will see if the market gets a shift or not. But just know that right now, at the time I'm recording this, the technicals look more bullish. All right. So with that being said, once again, guys, I really appreciate every single one of you for everything that you do for me as well, right? For liking my videos, for subscribing, and for also being very positive and supportive in the comments, at least for the most part. So I'm very, very excited to continue to do what I do. I really enjoy the work that I do. And I'll be back tomorrow morning to kind of give you guys a report on initial jobless claims and the more data that's coming out for the market tomorrow morning. So I'll see you guys during the pre-markets tomorrow. Thank you for listening and peace out.